Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar on material lights and rendering in depth with Autodesk Revit 2015. My name is Dhanjeet Sah and I'm working as BIM consultant with Cadgroup Australia. I deal with consulting, product support and training for Revit products, 3ds Max and AutoCAD. Being a 3ds Max user from last 15 years, I thought of taking one of my favorite topics to talk about material light and rendering, and we would see quite a number of things coming up in the next slides we'll be talking about. So I'm just going to open today's what's the agenda for this webinar. First of all, I'll be showing a couple of different ways of creating some custom materials like marble for floor finish, timber cladding, realistic glazing, glass, creating water materials, swimming pool, self-illumination materials. Later, we'll be talking about how to manage materials within project, or if you're changing one computer to another, how to manage this kind of materials. I'll be giving you a bit of insight about appearance versus physical assets. We'll be looking at setting up lights, how to correctly set up the lights, and I will be talking about the standard light versus photometric lights, which will be one of my favorite topics as well. Next we'll be talking about Autodesk 360 rendering, which is available for subscription customers. Now, at the end, yes, of course, we'll have Q&A sessions, and if you've got any questions or something in between, please feel free to send by chat or type in the questions, or there'll be Q&A so that you can enable your audio and you can throw any questions you may have with this related to this webinar. So let's get started. Now, a bit of we can see one of the example of a rendering produced from Revit 2015 using some custom materials and a daylight system. So there's only one light, and yeah, the materials are custom. We could see there's a timber cladding over there we have used to just to make using one of the custom image files. The next slide is another example of the same model using one of the night scene, where I have used, of course, there is a daylight, using evening time, and using number of artificial light in the design, and I have used some of the custom materials to add some of the effects. So one of the effects you could see a bit of nice self-illumination on the CG Villa. That's the text over here on the screen, and we can see we have seen some of the glow materials which are attached to the lighting fixtures. And so I'll be demonstrating some of these in the next in the live demonstration. This is another example of an exterior sunlight rendering produced from 2015, the custom material. So it's the same model, just using a different time and different camera angle. And we could see one of the swimming pool. I have just created the basic ones using a basic materials which is inbuilt with Revit. There's another slide. It's the same view with different timings of rendering using some of the artificial lights. This is one of the interior scenes from the same model, where I've used the glass materials. I've slightly modified to make it a bit of a nice wavy effect. And if we could see two of the lights in the middle of the room, with having some of the glow material or self-illumination material. So I'll be demonstrating how to create within Revit in the next couple of minutes. Now, this is nothing much new. Most of you know about Revit materials, which is, I'm just having a brief idea about like what are the asset types is for the defining materials. Now, most of us, we know the identity, basically hold identity data of the materials, such as description, manufacturing information, or the keynotes, which will be pretty useful if you are going to take material takeoff, where you can add information like what is the cost per square meter or something, what is the manufacturer, what is the URL, etc. And that can be very, very useful for material takeoff, and you can get a estimated value as well as a paint area or etc. The next we have is graphics, where you have controls how the materials look in non-rendered views. The appearance, which controls how the materials look in rendered, realistic, or retro views. And there are two aspects I've seen a lot of people may not be aware of, which is the physical assets that can be used for the structure analysis, and the next will be thermal, which can be used for energy analysis. Now, this is one of the slides I have pulled down, which is showing interior renderings, and compared to the last slides, basically I have created one of the floor finish, a different floor finish here, called using a marble, which is a kind of a nested materials. So I will be going through in demonstration. I will be talking about how to create these marble materials. We can see there is a screen I have placed on the table, which is a television. So that's also is easy way to create a default material using a custom image file we can attach to the video to the TV screen. So that's the easy way to do within Revit. Now, I'll be talking about now how to create a custom material. So this is an example of how creating a marble floor finish using a procedural map. Now, a lot of users, if you have, let's say, if you use 3ds Max in past couple of years, you may have known of some of the map types which is available in the materials. Now, this is a similar concept coming as 3ds Max the Revit has in it, and so we can take advantage of this. Now, in the diffuse surface area, you can apply this, we know, like we can apply the colors, or you can apply a map types. Now, if we use a color information, that is just a color, but you can use a map, and map, they have a different type of the maps. Most likely, most of the people, they use a map type called image, which allow you to browse any of the image files like JPG, TIFF, or TGA, or BMP formats to apply directly on the diffuse surface area. Instead of that, there are a couple of different map types which you can apply within Revit using some of the procedural maps, which is a map type which is created by mathematical algorithm. This can be generated in 2D or 3D dimensions. You can also nest another image or procedural maps to create a very complex material. So I'll be demonstrating how to create one of the marble material now in our demonstration. So I'm switching to Revit now, where I have one of these one of that particular file open with me, and I'm going to open one of the view living, and we could see here I have used a number of artificial lights which has we can see in the yellow area, and this can be controlled easily if we want to show that wave in a view. So if I'm going back, if I'm going to the VG control, under the lighting fixtures, there is a subcategory called light source. I'm unchecking that just for a while to not to show those light source. Now, on the floor material, now if I'm looking at the this particular slab here and looking at the material, what I've used is called at this moment is the default, so there's nothing much applied, so I'm going to create a new material. Now, creating material, there's two different ways. Most of we know that either we can directly open the material editor from the properties or type properties dialog box, or we can manually go to manage and manage tab, and we can get the material browser opened. I believe I'm using a dual screen, so I'm having a bit of drama about the material editor. Let me just move down. Sorry, okay. Now back to the Revit. Okay. Now, so if going back to manage materials, and here we could see I can create a default material, one of the materials what I want to create. So creating a custom material. Now, most of us we know, like we got a concept called new. Generally, you'll have a duplicate concept in Revit in most of the places, but here you got something called create new materials. You can start from very scratch. So I'm hitting create a new material. I can rename it and say this is going to be called as a marble finish. Marble finish, and now we can get started changing some of the parameters. So I'm going to make an identity data. So you want to call the description. So these are all information. As I said, identity data, this can be a very time saver, good time saver if you want to add some extra information to the material. This is the beauty of the software. So I'm going to add these couple of different information which I can use if for the material takeoff or for the scheduling. And under the graphics, we could find these are all for non-rendered view. So I may change this up to me to use as a rendering appearance. Now, looking at the appearance library, what we can see now is we have is the generic material. So now I can see there is a number 16. That means there is a similar name being used. Maybe this is the 16th time. So I would rather always try to give a particular name. So that is going to be unique name. So I'm going to call this as a marble floor finish. And the description you want to change or something, or keywords, these are all extra information you can use. Now, on the generic tab, we can see we have the color and image file. So on the image, if we click on that, we got these several map types. Now, as I said, most of the users, they prefer to use directly the image file. We let you select any of the image file from any of the different locations. Now, instead, I'm interested to use some of the procedural map here using something called marble. If I'm selecting this particular type of map, we got other information like what is the stone color and the vein color. Now, as I said, it can be very complex. That means the stone color also I can add another this kind of maps, or we can use image file if you like to. So for example, I'm going to select one of the image file here, which I can browse from some of the particular locations. So right now I'm going to use one of the type here from here using one of the JPEG files from one of the locations. And the advantage of using that is, as most of us we know, there isn't parameters here, so like you can correctly resize the tile size, etc. So that's the we can do. So for example, if my tile size of that is going to be maybe 400 by 450, you can basically change this parameter to match with that. Now, after using that, we can see I got these of there's a marble. I can go to the top level and look at that, how they have used in that particular space for the vein, or there's a spacing for the vein, and these are all something you can see it's happening in the real time. So once I'm happy with all of these settings, I can press done, and this is how they have created the marble finish. Now, what I'm going to do is, once I have created this particular materials, I'll just hit OK, and this can be used on the several area of the inside the project. So I'm selecting now the floor, go to edit type, hit on edit, and say instead of using a default materials, let me browse the previous materials, what I call as marble floor finish. So this way, basically, yeah, we can see this particular materials. Now it's just showing the updating. It's basically trying to get the thumbnail here, so which we can see now it has appeared there. So this can be applied directly there. Now, if I hit apply and press OK, so this is how. And if I'm going to turn back to realistic view or something, we would see this particular material on the scene. Now, after applying this particular marble materials, one thing I would like to also mention is we can add a nice bump effect on that. So if I'm scrolling back at the bottom, we have got here called bump parameters. Now, on the bump is more about adding some of the bumpiness to the materials, which you can add any of the image file, or you can add some of the map types. In this particular example, I've used something called checker, where if I look at the checker parameters, you can in fact control some other parameters, like what is the size of the checker you'd like to use, and based on the particular checker size, they will start creating the bumpiness, and you got the amount it controls how good the amount is would be. Now, if you got some of the image file or tile you want to use it, you can, instead of using a checker, you can switch back to image, or you can browse some of the image file from different source locations. So the idea of these two, so this is, there is an unlimited, or we can say there's a quite number of ways to change these parameters and achieve complex materials inside this Revit. Some of the textures and stuff, as you can download from the manufacturer's websites, or there is one of the websites, cgtextures.com I've used for this particular demonstration. You can use that as well. Now, I'm going to demonstrate another material type, how to create creating a nice wave effect material as a glass or something. So generally, sometimes instead of creating a very material from the scratch, sometimes you can choose one of the existing materials and quickly change some of the parameters. For example, I have got one of the glass block materials I've already created, which where I have basically used one of the glass materials which is pre-built within Revit. So there is an option here called something called replace this asset. So I'm just quickly demonstrating how I have browsed this particular material from asset browser. Now, this is one of the library you can think of inside Revit, which Autodesk will see the different material types for these applications for to use quickly for the within the projects. Now, if I'm looking at the appearance library, if I'm going to expand that, we would see there's a number of category of the materials. So I'm going to hit on glass. And now I'd like to also mention there is a two category here called glass and glass glazing. So of course I don't have to explain much about glazing. This will be good if you have a very clear glaze, the glazing for, and if you have a particular glass objects where they have a different refractive index for different type of the glasses, so these are all a part of or a standard part of Revit. So in that particular example, I have used a glass block. Now, one thing I need to highlight here, you got something called lock sign. That means this is a locked library, in which we can see directly on the top as well. So this is a shared library. This is being used for different softwares like AutoCAD or 3ds Max as well. And that's the reason why when we exporting this model to 3ds Max using FBX, they preserve the same materials in that particular file. So I'm going to use one of the glass block. So I'll just double click that. What will happen is they have replaced that, and now we can see it's called glass block 2. I will always try to give a different name of that so that the same material will be there in this project, but I can use in several different types. So I'm going to call this as a glass block new. So, and if I'm looking at these some of the parameters, there are a couple of parameters which I like to change. In this particular example, in the rendering, what I did was I've removed the transparency because they've used a couple of different materials there because there's a bumpiness out in transparency. What I'll do is I will just remove the image. I will just say remove image, use transparency value to, or use a little bit of transparency we can add, and amount, let's say bump to maybe around 75 or something, and using a bump map. Now instead of using that, in that particular example, what I did was to use one of these material, kind of like a glass block. Now I will just try to use this so that we have a nice wave effect on the glass, and I will resize that based on the height and width of that glass. So somewhere I'm going to say, okay, remove that. Say width is going to be 700 millimeters. The height is around 2400, which will slightly similar to matching with this particular size. Now we can have these preview in different views. So I'll say, okay, go to show me in the cube format, or we have or in different using different terms. So I'm going to use, let's say, a cube for a while, and that's the materials I've used in the previous renderings. Now if I switch to slide here, we will see a nice wave effect. Sorry, I'll just go back to the previous scene now. Now, creating a swimming pool materials, what I did was to switching to another view called exterior sun. And here we got the swimming pool objects which is a pool for the water. I have created a very thin floor type of elements there, and there is the material is right now is default. So if we create a swimming pool material, again we can use one of the existing assets. I'm going to click on create new materials. So let's say we'll rename to, or I'll call this as a pool water. In the appearance, we'll hit on asset browser, looking at the appearance library, and we'll look at the liquid, and here we can see nice a type of some material. So you might choose a swimming pool or reflecting pool or tropical, depends, or indoor pool, etc. Now I'm going to use a swimming pool material, and we can just double click to replace. And if you look at that, the parameters they have is a water type. You can say whether it's a swimming pool or generic reflecting pool. So in previous example, basically I've used a generic reflecting pool and just hit on render. So this is a very quick a simple way to create that swimming pool material. Now, looking at this particular example of scene, creating a self-illumination material for the lights. So I'm going to demonstrate in Revit how to create that. Self-illumination materials, there is one of the parameters we have to change. So I might have created one of the materials. I'll quickly use that as an example. So here I have got something called glass white high luminance. Well, if I look at that, the parameters, you can use a parameters like if you want to have reflectivity, yes or no, it's up to you. Well, for the lens, I may not use the reflectivity, may not be important. Yes, the important would be a little bit of transparency, add a little bit of transparency, and the most important is the self-illumination. Now, that's the parameter we have to change to get a nice glow effect. So, in fact, if it is a different light source, so it has a bit of color, filter color or something, you can start changing that. So, if it is a little bit of halogen lights, you might want to change a little bit of light filters, and you can say the luminance value. Now, we got a preset of value here, whether you can say it's whether to use for the different purpose of the self-illumination. So if you got a LED panel or LED screen, or if it is self-only screen, so we can see there is a couple of different presets has a different value. So if it is just a simple dim glow, we can use a value of 10. You got a LED panel which uses like 100 and etc. Now, for the example of that particular light, what I have used was just a value of 60 or somewhere. And the color temperature you can change as well, which will be good. So if I'm using 6500, it will be like a halogen look, or the color temperature if I'm changing to let's say around 4000 or something, which gives me a nice a clear white glow material. And this is the same materials I've used on the model, and we have seen the rendering. So I believe now I have given a different examples of creating some custom materials which was not available in the default library. Now, just the last one called to use creating that timber cladding is a similar way of creating that. Is I've used a image file on diffuse channel, and on the bump I use the same timber cladding. So I believe now we can imagine how easy it was to create that particular materials. Moving back to next slide. Now I'll be talking about the appearance versus physical assets. All we know the Revit materials hold information such as appearance, which are for architectural aspect. Physical assets can be added that can be used for structure analysis. Another asset also can be added for thermal analysis or for energy analysis. Now, if you're in a conceptual stage and willing to use your model for energy analysis, you could use existing Autodesk predefined thermal materials. Now, this is one of the beauty of the Revit materials, that it holds several properties that can be used for several aspects in design, visualization, or analysis. Now I'm going to switch to Revit to show how easily this information can be added to a material definition. So before doing that, I'll just show here one other things about the asset browser, which I'm going to show in the live demo as well. That if I'm switching to a physical asset, how easy is that? We can use one of the existing materials or physical assets from the library. So sorry about that. You have switched to Revit now. moving to Manage tab, hitting on Material, and say if I want to add a different asset for a similar material. For example, I'm in conceptual stage and say, yes, on that particular floor or marble floor, I want to add some physical assets on that. So I can just use a physical. So you just need to hit on plus and say physical, and this is where we can see. Now we can see clearly here something called aspect, and now these are all called physical materials. And as I said, these are all baked within Revit, and we can utilize these number of materials as it is. So we can see there's a quite number of different types of aluminum materials, or we got a brick, cord, common, bronze, brass, etc. If I expand the subcategory here, we got another there could be some of them. So we could say yes, some of them is empty. Yeah, maybe in the future you might see this will be definitely, or this might start adding quite a number of materials in the future. So I'm quickly going to, let's say, physical assets, and I believe there could be some material as a marble. So I can see now I have got, yes, the marble materials, and what I need to do is just double click. I believe now it's been added, and they got the basic thermal or mechanical properties here, or the strength properties, which is been added to these material definitions. Now, as I said, these definitely can be used for the structure analysis. Yes. So if it is a metallic or something, as simple as that, if I'm using a truss or beam or something, you can add that physical asset. And the next would be adding a different property type. If you like to add is maybe the thermal properties, which also can be, we can see nicely, we can see the aspect now is the thermal. So if I have that particular material types you want to add to design, we can see there's a quite number of thermal materials there, and I can select yes, the marble is available, and that's how that gives me all the thermal properties of the marble. So I can use for my energy analysis. Moving to the next slide would be talking about how to manage materials. As I'm on support, I get a lot of calls time to time while they that some of the customers, they call me for these very simple questions like, well, how to transfer the project, or let's say if they transfer the project from one piece to another, and when they render, there will be some of the rendering doesn't come as a proper material, what the material they have assigned, which is obvious, as the custom images or materials that you apply is a reference file and not saved with the project. I've highlighted some of the best practice for storing images within this slide. Another query is how to create your own library so that you can share with another project or with another user. In Revit, you can create your own library that will allow you to use the same material in different projects, or if you are to move the computers or you want to share the similar materials, you can also do the same from the Revit. Now, in the slide we have quickly shown like you can you can create a material library, and in the next at the bottom I have shown how some of the best practices for storing image files. So as I've mentioned, there is to store most of image files in one location. So for example, it could be inside your C drive or My Documents. So if you are moving or changing a computer somewhere, you can easily move a single folder which may have some subfolders you can organize as you wish, and to another computer, and just need to add inside the rendering options under options. where you have something called additional render appearance path. Now, if we just change the computers and move that folder to another computer, just need to add that as a path where Revit will look for some of the extra or custom image files from there. Now, that's very important as well for the cloud rendering. So please be aware of this particular path you might have to change. This can be changed from the revit.ini file as well. Now, moving that image file definitely will not be sufficient. You might have to move the material library file, which is extension is ADSK lib. So I'm going to demonstrate a little bit about this, so it will be useful for some of the users. So in this particular example, like I have this particular material, say I have created called marble floor finish, and say yes, I want to save in my library so that I want to use the same materials in different projects, or I might want to save with another users, or I want to save on the server somewhere. Well, how to do that? Now the easiest answer is yes, you can hit on first of all, sorry, you have to go to the asset browser first. So we'll hit on this button called Open Asset Browser. Under Asset Browser, we have this option at the bottom called either Open or say Create New Library. Now I'm going to hit on Create New Library. As I said, you can save to any of the folders. So for example, I'm going to save to this called this folder called, I will call this as a CG webinar new. I have an existing one, I'm just creating a new, and this is how they create a library file. Now I can create something called here called create category, and I will say yep, that's my called floor finish, and you can add several kind of category there. So I might want to say this is miscellaneous, or you can start adding something on, let's say, a wall material, etc. Now, this is very similar concepts as we have seen here. Once I have these all, so we have created the materials, but we have not moved any of the materials here. So now I'll be talking about how to move the materials from this particular project back to this library now. The easiest way answer would be hit on Document Assets, which basically show you all the materials being used within this particular project. So I have to find out that particular material, say for example called marble floor finish. Now once I'm marble finish here, or marble floor finish, I believe it could be the one. So I will I'll just select this material, just drag, and we can see there is a plus sign on the icon. That means I'm ready to release the mouse, and what happens is now this has been copied to my subcategory. So that's the library, it's holding this particular material. Now I can do the couple of other things. What I'll do is I'll say, yep, just for this demonstration, I will show a couple of wall materials I'm going to add to this particular category. So I can add some wall, the TV screen I'm going to use on the miscellaneous, etc. So now this is how you start building your own library, and as I said, this will be saved, and those all references, images, if it is on one single folder, it will be much easier if you organize that way. So if you're moving or changing to the another PC, you just need to move the Autodesk library file that we have saved, plus move that single folder called images and repath under options, which can simply be accessed from Revit option dialog box. So you have to go to Revit rendering, and here we can add the reference path. So for example, I have added that. Now, quickly going to the standard light versus photometric light. This is one of my favorite topics. I always like to play with Revit. worked with a couple of lighting manufacturers in the past, and that gives me opportunity to understand the lighting much more in a perfect way. Now, the standard lights generally are those. There is a 3 different light source they will have is a point emitter or a spherical or cone. In those informations, you can add your custom values if you want to. So, or we can use a concept called photometric web files. That's a digital file you can download directly from the manufacturer, where we do not have to change any of the, let's say, the light source definitions. Now, the light source can be changed, or this information can be changed from the family editor environment, not within the project. So later I'm going to demonstrate this, how to change that. So in this particular example, I have mentioned here, like for example, in the family editor, if we change the light source definition to web, they will automatically add a parameter, something called photometric web file. That's where you're going to add that digital files that you can directly download from some of the manufacturer. Now, this is one of the properties here we can see, and this download the IS files you can directly download from a couple of different manufacturers. I'm using arco.com. I have used this website from last 12 to 13 years, I believe now, where you have hundreds of IS files you can download based on the lighting fixtures, model, etc. I've encountered another called Australian company that's listed on the PowerPoint. Now there could be several. I mean, you just need to refer to the manufacturer and find out some IS files. And the best answer is Google. So, one of the places you can find a lot of other information. Now, the most important one of the point is the photometric web part is Revit.ini. Well, this is one of the very crucial part. A lot of people registered cases with me about like not to have an artificial light properly rendered, or doesn't render correctly, or it doesn't have the I can say the desired effect in the rendering. So the answer was the missing IS file. That means it was not properly configured. So there is a one path Revit will always look, which is defined on Revit.ini file. So for example, in this case, that by default for my machine, they are looking inside C drive program data, Autodesk Navisworks 2015/IS file. So the most important part to remember is to place all the IS files, which are your customs, has to be in this particular cases, and that's where Revit is going to look for IS files which are defined in every lighting fixtures what you use in your design. Now, quickly I'm going to Revit, and so how to change that values. So I'm switching to a 3D view now. I believe I'm going to just select one of the lighting here and say, yep, I want to change this as a photometric. So let's see what is inside. So when I hit on Edit Family, and if I look at the light source definition, so that's my light source. And if I look at the properties there, this has been selected called photometric web file. Now, just to show you a demonstration, if I'm using this light distribution, which is this tree, will change back to normal standard light. So for example, if it is a point emitter and using a called a spherical or maybe hemispherical, now if I look at the light source definition or sorry, the family type values, we would see that particular photometric file information is lost right now. So as soon as if I switch the light source definition, so let me select the light source definition and change to web, And if I come back to family types, here we would see a parameter called photometric web files. Now I will hit on that and say, yep, I have downloaded one of the ERCO, a downlight kind of IS file. As I said, this is one of the digital files. Well, this is not created by me, but by ERCO, and they use their own equipment to create or fill in these particular values. Generally, to understand is a couple of information we'll see. They have a couple of informations like what's the company name, the issue date, what is the tilt value, and they start with some other digital parameters. Well, I'm not expert at this all how this has been baked, but my understanding is they use a their own device to get this all done in a particular studio environment. And this information, as I said, these are baked with this particular file we can directly use, and we do not have to bother about other information. So if I am looking for lighting, a correct lighting like this or rendering, yes, this will be the way to go. Now, once I have used this particular file, and if I hit apply, we would see they give us a particular value. Now, the tilt angle is 0. At this moment, what I'm going to do is change to maybe to a 45 degree for now, just for okay, sorry, let's make a 90 or minus 90. All right, so we want that way. Now this gives an impression like how the lighting spread will be, etc. If I'm changing a different IS file, it gives me a nice preview as well. For example, I'm selecting this particular IS file, and that's how the lighting distribution will be. So this gives visual feedback as well within the project, within a family editor environment. Now, once I'm happy with that, I will just load into projects and say, yep, I override. And if you want to see those lighting distribution, as we have seen in the beginning, we can go to a visible graphics override under lighting fixtures. We can hit the light source, and I believe it's not coming up. I believe we have to go to, let's say, go to another different side mode, and yes, here you can start looking at the light distribution. So this is a nice visual feedback you can receive from the lighting fixtures. And as I said, the tips and tricks for this is like, if we are creating a particular lighting fixtures, the important things to understand is the materials on the elements. So if I have a particular device, yes, create a as close as you can. It may not be a very, very accurate model, but a conceptual type of, let's say, the parts, and you can apply the material. So if I'm applying a particular material, like for example, there's been used a material called lens, etc., which there is a metal material at this moment. So if I have a nice, let's say, a lead cover or something, we can add extra materials and add a glow to that. Now, moving to the next slide, we'll be talking about some of the rendering options available with Revit. There are two options available for rendering in Revit 2015. In-built rendering systems, that is a technology from Mental Ray. This rendering engine uses up to 16 core in 2015. There was limited. When they started, I believe they started using 4 cores. Later, they started using 8. Now they're using 16 core, which is a pretty. So if you have a core like 16 or something, yep, they're gonna use, and it is a multi-threaded. The most important thing to notice is 3ds Max also uses a similar technology, but I would say Revit is like a basic calculator, whereas the Mental Ray inside Autodesk Max will be like a kind of scientific calculator where you can use different algorithms. So there is definitely a huge difference between the type of rendering engine they use in Revit and in Autodesk Max. It's two different things, but it's similar. It's from the similar technology. Now, a very important thing to notice about this is not available for Revit LT versions. So I believe if you have used Revit LT, you may not find you can to render inside this software, but you have to use a different rendering technology, rendering cloud. Now, this is also a very good feature available for Revit users, and it's from last couple of years now. Well, you can use rendering in cloud. Wow! All right. So you can use render 3D views online to create still images and interactive panoramas. So before we're going to talk about that, I'm just giving a bit of interior rendering, some of the interior tips. This will be for both rendering for in the cloud or in build features. This is something some of the users that may have thrown some of the questions back to me in the earlier days. So I have included here the nice thing to do if I'm rendering a interior scene using a camera. There's an option here to change or using the daylight portal options, which you can take the windows, doors, and curtain walls that allow the light to be entered in the room area, etc. So that's the one thing, and most important part is the quality setting would be something very important to understand. That is, I may not use a very high value because that's like a very long time. Generally, the high value will produce a nice rendering. The lighting scheme is equally important. So if you just hit on the scheme, you could see like if it is exterior scene or interior scene, or whether it's a sun or artificial or just a sun only. So these are all I believe like most of you know about this. So that's some of the tips about interior views. Now moving to Autodesk 360 rendering, as we can see, we can create high quality photorealistic images, panoramas, and we can create solar studies plus illuminance simulations. So solar studies, yes, it is available within software, but illuminance simulations something you can do with Autodesk 360 rendering. Now the 360, you can take advantage of virtually infinite computing power in the cloud to create high quality rendering in fraction of time. That means while you're working with projects, you can send this rendering in the cloud and sit back, enjoy, and you will get notified if you have checked the button called send me notification after finish rendering, and you're done. But we have to think about the cloud credit as well, which I'm going to reveal in a couple of minutes. So if I'm looking at this will be the screen you'll be getting when you're going to use this feature called render in cloud. So generally the test renderings are free, and if you're rendering the different resolution based on that, so currently you can render up to 16 megapixels, and that's show you how much cloud credit you require to render that particular size. If you look at that, my slide, I have got there's if I select a 9 megapixels, the cloud credit they required is 5. What I have is 930,000 cloud credits, which is massive for me. To be honest, I'm one of the luckiest person as a retailer to have this much of cloud credit. You may have less up, but just a quick rundown. What you will get with this software is, up to now, Autodesk, they give you 100 cloud credit per license per year. So that's the generic. It comes with the subscription, and if you have to extend these all, that is you can buy from resellers or from Autodesk. So I'm going to show you one of these examples. This has been used this is using a cloud environment. So I just quickly want to show you one of the demonstrations how this can be done within Revit. Now, there is an inbuilt tool. So, for example, if I have one of the exterior scene or something, if I want to throw to the cloud rendering, if you're going to the View tab, here we got this feature called Render in Cloud. Now, the one thing we have to understand that is they will quickly give you the how much cloud credits you have, etc., how much you require, etc. So I'm going to use for this demonstration 9 megapixels, for example, and say yes, email me when it is completed. Now, if I hit on start rendering, what will happen is they are going to gather all the this particular project file plus material information plus light information, and please don't forget those IES files. Everything will be thrown out to the cloud. So it's uploading the model, and now they are working on that. So if I'm looking at on the top, we got the spinning, and they say, yep, it's now working with the rendering systems. If you want to see the rendering, it's happening or something, now I can see there's uploading at this moment. And if I click on that, it will, since I have logged into the account, it's directly going to this environment. Now, please take note, if you are using your as a default browser as a Chrome, and Chrome is definitely is recommended for this rendering 360. So I'm just quickly using one of the scene which has been rendered. The advantage of using that is, as I said, I can just hit on this one of the finished render, and nice thing about that is something called adjust exposure or render as panorama or download images. Now, these are nice options. So if I'm using this feature called adjust exposure, you can say I can quickly change the exposure controls, etc., or highlights, or changing a little bit of mid-tones, change the controls for the shadows, or a little bit of saturation I can boost up. And if I hit apply, this basically is going to automate it, re-render in a fraction of seconds, and you can simply download that as a different version of your image files. So that's the beauty of Autodesk 360 rendering. And as I said, you can also render with the panorama, etc. Now, quickly, I'm going to talk about, we have our free workshop on 5th of February, and we have got 2 sessions on the same day, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Another will be from 1 to 2 p.m. So if you'd like to try out the similar things what you have seen now, or you want to learn more, this is a good opportunity to come to our office locations. That's the address, and that's my email address. If you have not received any invitation or something, please feel free to send me email. I can send you the registration link so that you can register for this particular free workshop. Now, I'm going to question and answer session now. So I'm looking for the questions, and yes, I have got a couple of questions I can see in the queue. So I will go one by one to answer that. Okay, we have got, can you create a custom library for an office and locate in it on a central server? The answer is yes. Believe I have mentioned that. Now, looking at the library file, if you are saving on local as an ADSK format, which basically, as I said, is a small file, the important part is the image file, because image may be hundreds of them and would have maybe more than hundreds of megabytes of data. So it's up to you. Yes, you can simply save the material library on the server, and the image is also on the server, but we just need to to have a good understanding that if I save those image folders to locally, that will be local access when the rendering has been the process. So the saving locally the image files will be definitely a time saver. But if it is a requirement for your case, and if you got a good network infrastructure, maybe 100 Mbps or a gig, so it will be faster for you to render. Okay, so I've got another question. It's called, what is a good sort of image files to use for bump parameter? That's a nice question. Yes, for the bump parameter, the good source of image will be using black and white. So you might use any of the image editors. So if you got any of the text or something you have downloaded which is color, you can simply use one of the image editor like Photoshop, or using I'm using a software called GIMP, G-I-M-P, which is a basic version, very similar to a basic version of Adobe Photoshop, which you can download freely from the website. So if you can Google GIMP, and you would get that software. Okay, so moving to the next questions I have, can I download the presentation slide? Okay, the answer is I have to check that back, and I'll see what I can do. Is there any website that you can download suitable images files for materials or bump properties? I think I have mentioned one of the web link, www.cgtextures.com. So cgtextures.com. If I could, you can Google in if you want to, and there's a simple. You have to be enrolled as a user. So there is a paid version, there's unpaid free version as well. So it's up to you. We are going to decide how you want to go. Now I'm moving to the next question called, how do I save our asset I create into library? I believe I have shown this workflow, but just a quick one. As I said, you have to understand that if you create a materials, you are creating in a project first. Next would be just to drag that material to your library files. I believe I have shown in the video, sorry, in the demonstrations. Now, okay, moving to next question. When I scan in materials, they often appear a lot lighter in the render. Is there a way to stop this? I believe there could be a change in the parameter, so I might have to look into that. Well, when you scan the materials, if it is a lot lighter, means either we have to think of whether after scanning you think if it is a problem, or just in the JPG file looks pretty much good, but when you're changing applying in the Revit materials, if it is different, that means there is some parameters. I believe it could be something to do with the diffuse level. So there could be an image fade quality. You might want to look at that. Maybe make it 0. That might give you the best result. I've got another question called okay, it's called rendered image prints. It printed upside down when it is printed with PDF. Well, this is a bit of technical questions. Well, it depends on what PDF you're looking for. To be honest, I have not seen these issues before, but I'd like to see that. If you got these questions, yep, send us an email, and we need to look into this issue. Now, I'm still looking for some other questions. Yes, I've got something called, when you are rendering glass, why are you using glass block in the bump property? Well, the glass block I've used just for this demonstration, well, it was my choice because I wanted to have a bump properties, and generally if I'm using a glazing materials, we do not have that properties, and that's the reason why I use a glass block. The next one, can I get a copy of this video presentation? The answer is yes, it's been recorded, so once everything is been done, yes, we'll be uploading to one of the link, and we can send you the links. Yeah, looks like all the questions have been answered, and we're nearly touching our time, and I believe, yeah, I have answered most of them, which is, I believe I have crossed a little bit of time, but thank you so much for your questions. And most likely, yes, we'll see some of the different webinars in the future. We'll send you invite if you are interested, you can sign in with that. So thank you very much again, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.